everybody, my name is Gabby and I'm super excited to be here today with you all. I hope you're doing well. Today we're talking about my favorite thing, which is houseplants. We're going to talk about the top 3 houseplants that are perfect for beginners. We're going to talk about spider plants, which are these grassy plants here. We're going to talk about pothos, which are these viney, bushy plants. And we're going to talk about snake plants. These 3 plants are perfect for beginners for a lot of different reasons. Their care is really simple, their maintenance is really straightforward, and they're pretty good to pretty easy to propagate. I think that they're really good teaching plants for these reasons. They make it really easy for a new plant parent to begin to learn the signs of overwatering, underwatering, really help build your confidence in terms of using your intuition to know, when a plant needs something. There's way more than these 3 houseplants that exist that are just fine for beginners. And I say just fine because I wouldn't necessarily call them teaching plants. They will do just fine. For example, this Monstera, it's a gorgeous, beautiful plant. It'll do just fine if you bring it home as a beginner and you don't totally know what you're doing. As long as you give it enough light and water it reasonably, it will grow and it will do well. However, when it starts to get too big and needs to be repotted, right, needs some maintenance, or if you want to, try your hand at propagating, this is a really intimidating plant to do those things with, right? So just something to consider. So one of the main questions that I get all the time from new plant parents is, when should I water my plant? How often do I water this plant? And that question is really difficult to answer because it depends. It depends on what plant you have. It depends on how much sunlight the plant is getting. It depends on how fast draining the soil is. It depends on so many things. So the best way to think about watering, right, is to think about a car, okay? So you have a Toyota Corolla, I have a Toyota Corolla. How often should we put gas in the tank? There is not one answer for that, right? So how often I put gas in my tank versus how often you put gas in your tank is going to depend on how far am I driving the car, how often am I driving the car, how fast am I driving the car, right? There's so many things that will dictate whether I am filling up once a week or filling up twice a week or filling up once a month. And that's the same thing for plants. When a plant is getting a lot of sun, when it's really warm, during the grow season, plants are drinking a lot more, so they need more water. When it's cold, it's winter, or early spring, or transitioning into fall, and there's just it's colder and there's not as much warmth, then plants need less water. And then of course you've got some plants that like to stay moist all the time, and some plants that need to be they want to get fully dried out before they get watered again. So it just depends. What I suggest for a new plant parent when it comes to watering is pick a day of the week that you have some time to check on your plants regularly, right? So for me, that is Saturday mornings. I wake up and I go around and I do my water check for my plants. And what my water check consists of is taking a finger and sticking it into the soil about halfway up my finger, 1 to 2 inches or so, and feeling the soil. If the soil is wet, for my plants that like to dry out between waterings, if the soil is wet, I won't water it. If the soil is dry, I give it some water. How much water I give the plant, again, it depends on, it depends on what plant it is, and there's a lot of different things. However, for the most part, I kind of pour water in, let an even layer of water sort of fill up the pot, and let it drain through. Most plants can do well with a good soaking. That's a really general statement, but for the most part. So if you let the water come all the way through the plant into the saucer, and then for some plants you can let the water sit there for 30 minutes before dumping it, and for other plants you want to dump the water as soon as it pours out. Sometimes watering in a sink or watering in your bathtub is the best way to go, so that it just drains right into the tub. So for these three plants that we're going to talk about today, the spider plant, the pothos, and the snake plant, the watering, like I said, you check it. The soil for these plants, all three of these plants, really straightforward. It's just your basic potting soil with whatever aeration tool you want to use. An aeration tool is a thing that you add into the soil to make sure that it's not densely packed so that the water can flow through it. That can be perlite, which is those like white styrofoamy looking balls, or it could be rice husks, or it could be mulch bark, it could be pebbles, it could be sand. There's so many different aeration tools. What you choose is 100% up to you. I highly suggest doing some research to find out what each of those things is, and determining for yourself which one you would like to use. So that's the soil for these, really straightforward. And then sunlight for these three plants is super easy. So the reason why I like to suggest these plants to new plant parents is because, and raise your hand if you've done it, because I've done it. You buy a plant, you bring it home, and you're like, I want to put it in this corner. I just know that it's going to look so good in that corner, and I really needed a plant there. And you put it in the corner, and after a while, it dies because you decided where to put that plant, not based on what the plant needs, but based on what you wanted. Plants will do well based on the conditions you put them in, right? So it doesn't matter if you have a green thumb or a black thumb, if you normally kill plants or you are really good at taking care of plants. If you take a plant and put it in conditions that are not right for the plant, no amount of care and TLC is gonna make that plant happy, right? So these plants you can put just about anywhere in your home and they'll do okay. I will say there are places, I think, for each of them where they will be optimally happy, right? However, they'll do well just about anywhere you put them. So for spider plants and pothos, that is gonna be, I think, in an area that gets some light, but it's not necessarily like bright, direct light where it's getting sun several hours out of the day. So you can put them in your bedroom, you can put them in your office, you can put them in a window, not in a window, whatever you want to do. Snake plants are gonna do best in a bright spot by a window. However, again, they'll do just fine wherever you put them. And that, I'm going to talk about snake plants separately from pothos and spider plants because they are just slightly different. I would say if we're gonna put these sort of in a graduated, easiest to hardest, I would say spider, pothos, snake plant. So we'll start with the spider plant and then we'll graduate ourselves up to graduate up to a snake plant. And hopefully by the end of this video, you will feel confident to get all the plants, fill up your home, and start building your confidence towards being the most amazing plant parent that I know you can be. So, spider plants. As I mentioned, their watering is pretty straightforward. Signs that these plants need water. If you take a look at the leaves here, this is a variegated spider plant. So you got this white strip down the middle, and then you have these green strips on the outside. If this plant needs water, it will droop. So see how it's sticking up here at the top? That will droop like this. And then the color of these leaves will start to get like a pale green. And that's a sign that it wants water. Signs that this is getting overwatered would be yellow leaves. It also will droop. Most plants, if you're overwatering it, will droop because it's like, whoa, I'm dying. But it's a different kind of droop. So I guess that's sort of why I'm saying these are great plants to teach you, because if you see the way this droops when it's underwatered versus when it's overwatered, you'll know what I mean, that there's a difference in that droop. They're both droops, but they're different. So that's the spider plant. We'll talk about maintenance and propagation of this plant a little bit later. Pathos, these beautiful bushy viney plants. The way that these plants show you that they want to be watered is very similar to the spider plant. They'll droop, their leaves will start to curl inward a little bit, and then you know it's time to water. They will also, if they're overwatered, they will get yellow, their leaves will get yellow. However, I want to make a distinction because not all yellow leaves are bad, okay? If you have a pothos and there is one yellow leaf, okay, and the rest of the plant looks just fine, then the plant is fine. It's just getting rid of dead weight. If you have multiple leaves turning yellow and the plant overall doesn't look happy, and doesn't look happy means it's drooping, it's curling, it's just, the color is not as dark and luscious as it was, like maybe the leaves are dull. See how they're kind of shiny? They're dull. That might be an indication that there's overwatering. The best way to know if you're overwatering a plant, stick your finger in the soil. If that soil is soaking wet, stop watering your plant. Plants will do just fine, especially these plants will do just fine if you underwater them. They may need some TLC to get back up to where they need to be. However, if you overwater a plant and those roots start to rot, there is no coming back from that. So Pathos, super straightforward. And for maintenance and propagation, again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So the last plant we'll talk about is our snake plant. And this snake plant actually started, I wonder if I can find the one. It started with this one leaf, maybe a little over a year ago, and this is where it is now. So watering snake plants and the signs of overwatering and underwatering are just slightly different than the other two plants we talked about. Snake plants, they retain a decent amount of water actually in their leaves. So if a snake plant is underwatered, meaning it's thirsty, what'll happen is the leaves will start to shrivel and like get really wrinkly, as if the plant is starting to suck the water out of the leaves in order to keep the roots alive. I mean, that's literally what's happening. If it is overwatered, you will see it will start to like fall over, the leaves will start drooping, and if it's really overwatered, then the leaves will start to turn yellow, and at that point, I don't know if you're dealing with root rot or not, but the only way to know is to pull the plant out of the soil and take a look at the roots and make sure they're not mushy. For all three of these plants, let me just backtrack one second. For all three of these plants, and any plant in general, as you're starting to learn the signs and symptoms of overwatering and underwatering, you know, your plant will go through stages of stress and happiness. However, you don't want to keep your plant in that state of drooping and then being watered, then drooping and being watered. You want to get into a rhythm where you know, you're watering consistently enough so that the plant is always staying happy, because if you're constantly sending the plant into a state of stress, it can't thrive, right? And if it can't thrive, it's not going to get, you know, big and wonderful and luscious. So these plants are great to help you build that confidence, right? To know, okay, I've stuck my finger in, I can water, all the things you need to know in order to water on a regular basis. I hope that makes sense. So back to our snake plant. Snake plants, when it comes to their maintenance, there really isn't that much you need to do. I believe they can get browned tips if they are underwatered. And if that's the case, like all plants, you can just break that off, because once it's brown, it's not coming back. But for the most part, the only maintenance that they have is repotting, and they're really easy to repot. I don't know what else to say. You just pull it up out of the soil, pick a bigger pot, maybe 2 inches bigger, put it in there and add more soil. Can't get much easier than that. Propagating is also really simple for these plants. However, it is a real test of patience, something I am usually lacking. Plants have really taught me how to be patient. If that is something you are working on, I highly suggest you get into plants. So to propagate a snake plant, all you want to do, you can just cut the leaf. You want to cut as close to like the soil line, or as close to the base of the plant as possible for aesthetics, and also just because like if you cut up here, you may do just fine getting roots, but you'll have more success closer to the root system. So you cut this here, stick it in water, and then you wait, and then you wait, and then you wait, and then you wait some more. And in maybe 3, 4, maybe 5 months, you'll start to see some roots. And once you have a ton of really juicy, healthy roots, then you can stick it in soil. And then you will have multiple plants, and it's glorious. Now, this plant that I showed you, look how happy this plant is, right? And then, can you see? It's a yellow leaf. And in fact, this leaf is on its way to being yellow, but it's not yellow yet. So when you see a yellow leaf, you may freak out. Oh my God, it's a yellow leaf, my plant is dying. What do I do? Or like this, you know, this brown tip. Oh my gosh, this is it. I'm a terrible plant parent. How am I ever gonna recover from this? I might as well just throw the whole thing out. Or we can just recognize that as plants grow, they have to shed some of their weight, you know? So a yellowing leaf, when a plant looks this happy and healthy, is just normal leaf drop. Totally fine. And I usually just pick them out, throw it away. Now on spider plants, we also get, you know, browning leaves. Again, normal leaf drop. If the rest of the plant looks happy and healthy, it's just normal leaf drop. So I just pull those off. And this is part of my watering routine. I go around, I water the plants, and then I check them for, you know, their haircuts or their, you know, getting little trims. And I pull things off and just clean them up. So for this plant, there are some of the tips are brown. I don't know if you can see. Yeah, let's see. So see how that tip is brown? So what I'm gonna do, I just take my fingernail and I rip it off and clean it up. So I'll do that all around the whole plant, and it just makes the plant look, nice and gets rid of a part of the leaf that is not gonna grow back. Now, if you're wondering, you know, why does this happen? You know, shouldn't we just be trying to prevent the leaves from getting brown? Yes. However, it happens. Like I said earlier, plants do well based on care. I mean, your level of care is important. However, the conditions in the environment that the plant are in are really going to be the deciding factors for how a plant does. And when during the winter, it's low humidity here, and I'll admit with my spider plants and my pothos, I kind of beat them up a little bit because I know they can take it. So sometimes, you know, I'll miss a watering or I'll underwater, whatever, and these brown tips are sort of signs of that. But overall, the plant is fine. The plant's healthy. I know that the root system is doing just fine. So it's not a cause for concern in my mind. It just means I have more cleaning up to do. So I'll go around and do that for most of my plants, and then I have a pretty looking plant. Now, these babies, if you're wondering how to get these babies, it's really, really simple. Spider plants like to be what's called root bound. Root bound is exactly what it sounds like. The roots have gotten so tightly packed in the pot that for most other plants, you would want to take the plant out of this pot and put it in a bigger pot so that the roots can reacclimate to more soil. Because what happens when it gets root bound is the roots have moved outside of the soil, and so now they're not really pulling in as many nutrients as they would be if they were surrounded by soil. Make sense? What happens with a spider plant when it gets root bound is it almost says to the main plant, oh no, we might die. And the plant's response to this, and this is why I say plants just want to live, is to shoot out babies, to say, oh, if I'm gonna die, at least I can, you know, put something else out into the world. Isn't that amazing? Plants, am I right? So, if you want beautiful babies like this, let your main plant outgrow the pot. As you can see, I've done that with just about all of my spider plants. Not because I want a ton of babies. I actually, in fact, feel a little overwhelmed with how many babies I have. And if you would like a baby, let me know. And we can arrange that after COVID is over. But mostly because spider plants grow so quickly, and to change their pots over and over and over and over again would just be A, time consuming, and B, expensive. So I just leave them in the pot until they get really out of control, and then maybe I'll repot them like I did this and put them in a bigger pot. But So that is how you get babies. And to propagate these babies, super simple. All right, let's see if I can show this to you. So what is happening is the plant is shooting out this stick, and along the stick, depending on how long you've been doing this, it sends off these shoots. And then at the bottom of the shoot, you have a plant. You know when to pull these off when you have a decent set of roots. So this is totally fine to come off because there's a decent set of roots here. Let me see if I can find one that's not ready to come off. Probably not, because these all have had babies for a very long time. I don't think I'm gonna be able to find one, but basically if you don't see little nuggets of roots, it's not ready. And then what you do to get the baby off, let's see. Can you see this? Yeah. Is you simply pluck it off. So now I have the plant. What will happen is this shoot will die. It's fine, and then you can just cut it off. And then you want to stick it in water. So I already have some things propagating in here, and this is what the roots will look like after you let it sit in water for several weeks. So it went from this to this. And this is ready to go in some soil. So I'm just gonna stick this in water, boop. Change the water every day if you remember. If you don't remember every day, that's fine. Just change it as much as you remember. The oxygen in the water is actually, it helps stimulate the roots for growth. This is a Pathos clipping. So the root is here and here. And a lot of folks, let's see, if I show you this plant, you may think that, you know, if you've never propagated before, maybe you think that the roots will grow out of the leaf or the stem, but that's not true. There are these little nodes on the plants. Let's see if I can find a more prominent one. See that? That is where the root grows out of. So if you want to propagate a pothos, you would cut right underneath that, boop, right here, and then stick this in water and the root will grow out of this. You don't need leaves to propagate. So much so that here is a stick from a pothos. There is no leaf on it. Actually, a leaf is just starting to grow. The root is growing fully out of this little root node. So to plant this little spider plant that I just took out of soil, I'm just gonna take this little 4-inch pot. I've already filled it up with soil, make a little hole with my fingers, stick, you know what? Sometimes you have to sacrifice things. I'm gonna get rid of this leaf because it's gonna die anyways, because it's so close to the root system. Same with this one. And then you just stick it in the soil. You wanna make sure all the roots are in there. And spider plant roots are really resilient, so you can pack them, push them, they'll be just fine. And voila. Give it a little bit of water, put it in a warm area with a little bit of sun, because as the roots are settling, they need to stay a little warm, and you're good to go. If you're ready to start your plant journey, fill up your home with wonderful plants, and you're looking for a place to start, spider plants, pothos, and snake plants are the way to go. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If you've got plants that need some TLC, you can find me on Instagram at Plant Doula Club. See you on the internet.